I just, was unable to record videos. But don't worry, because of the time I was unable to work on videos, a backlog has accumulated and a lot of videos are on the way, and today is a long anticipated one, and that is the Halo Jazwares, the Spartan Collection Wave 6 review. Now, I'm very excited for this wave because there's a lot of cool figures with a lot of new accessories that will be introduced to this series that I wanted to see. So, with all that said, let's jump into the first figure, which would be Spartan Linda. The first takeaway is the new art style for the boxing, and I really like it, the color scheme and just how it's all put together. It looks really clean, really slick. If we look at the back of the box, we can see the rest of Wave 6, and then here's the big picture of Linda with her non-reflective icky visor. And then if we look at the side of the box, we get another photo of Linda, and just opening up the box, we can see that the backdrop for the box is also changed. It's this kind of digital glitch looking background, and just first impressions on the figure, everything is looking good visually. So let's hop right into the figure. Starting off with articulation in the head region, she cannot rotate her head 360 degrees because her helmet does clash with her chest rig, but she can look up and down and kind of bop her head back and forth and sort of tilt her head side to side, but unfortunately she cannot rotate her head 360 degrees. Then jumping into arm articulation, she can't really bring her arms up all the way because the shoulder clashes with the chest rig, but she can rotate them 360 degrees, which is always good to see. And then getting to the elbow articulation, something that's kind of unfortunate with this figure is that she can't really bring her forearms up all the way. She can kind of rest it at a 90-degree angle, and then after that you can't really bring it up anymore. I understand that it's the armor clashing with itself, so it's semi-realistic, but I just kind of wish there was more articulation in that region of her arm. And then of course, moving to the hand articulation, it's the same as ever. Rotate it 360 degrees and bend it pretty much however you want. Then moving on down to the torso area of the figure, there is no torso articulation. She cannot rotate, she cannot bend back and forth, tilt at all. The stomach piece is literally limiting the torso because there is a ball joint in there, and you can get articulation for these figures, but the stomach piece that Jazware makes just doesn't allow them to move at all. Then moving to the legs, you can have her sit if you want her to, and you can rotate her legs at the thigh 360 degrees, but just be careful with the socket because sometimes it will get stuck. But you can also tilt the legs side to side if you really wanted to do that as well. Good to see for dynamic poses and whatnot. Then moving to the knee articulation, they're still doing that gross looking knee articulation, just that non-organic looking bend, just so they can do butt kicks, because if a figure can do butt kicks, there's a lot of range of motion for dynamic poses and playability, and just the execution that Jazware's been doing just isn't visually pleasing. It's just kind of grody. It doesn't look organic. It kind of looks like they're just breaking their knees, and I really wish they would do something to fix that. And moving down to the feet, the formula has been the same since day one. You can rotate them 360 degrees and pretty much angle them almost however you want for balance and posability. And then the toes, obviously they just bend up and down. They can't really mess that up. If they mess that up, I'm going to lose all faith in Jazwares. Then moving on to accessories is Linda's sniper rifle, the Nornfang, with the paint job that we saw in Halo 5. Now this is a really cool looking paint job, and I think Jazware did a really good job at nailing it. And it's just using the Halo Infinite sniper rifle because this is the infinite iteration of Linda, so of course we would get the infinite sniper rifle. But I really like how the wolf plays into the handle and how they got the yellow and the brown. I think Jazware did a really good job with the paint job on the sniper rifle. But the only issue I do have with this sniper rifle is that this is made out of the cheap plastic that Jazware is using for all their weapons, and because the sniper rifle is a thin weapon, the barrel tends to bend very easily, and that is what happened with mine. So unfortunately I have to display my Linda with a sniper rifle that has a bent barrel, and it's just hard to straighten it out. But besides the barrel kind of being semi-bent, I think Jazware did a really good job at nailing down the paint job for Linda's sniper rifle, and they are using the same sculpt as they've used since day one for the sniper rifle, and I have no complaints about that personally. And for the second weapon included is the sidekick, and this is obviously the new model that Jazware is using for the Spartan collection. And for the final accessories are the additional hands. Linda comes with 2 holding hands, 2 closed fists, 2 trigger finger hands, 1 open hand with the appropriate armor plating on them. for all your posing needs. And that is everything included with Spartan Linda. So now we're at the turntable segment of the video where I go over what I like, dislike, stuff like that. And just getting the sour stuff out of the way first, I want to go over what I dislike about this figure. And starting off with the really big one, which is the torso articulation. It bums me out that there is none. You think as Jazwares would progress with the Spartan collection, the figures would be getting better, not worse, because I remember figures in the Spartan collection having torso articulation and being able to bend, and it just seems like that they're sacrificing that. I don't know if it's just to have a good looking stomach area for the undersuit or what, but the torso articulation is definitely getting worse, and I really wish Jazwares would 180 and fix that. Just whatever you got to do, but I just really wish that, you know, the torso articulation for the agile Spartans would be really good, because you think that these agile super soldiers would be able to move their torso around very easily, but these figures, you know, they're not able to do that. And then I think my only other issue articulation wise is with the forearms, because of how limited her forearm articulation is, or how limited she can bring it up. She can kind of hold her weapons in weird ways, like I should say she can't really hold her weapons right, so she has to hold them in weird ways, or just kind of, you know, look like she's off-putting them or offsetting them rather than aiming down the scope. You cannot get her to look down the scope unless you have her prone or something, because of the forearm not being able to go up all the way, which is very unfortunate. And the last con that I can think of for this figure is the sniper rifle, and what I'm referring to is how the barrel is kind of bent. I don't know, you guys might get a straight barrel and you're very lucky bastards, I envy you, but for me, I unfortunately do not have a straight barrel. It is kind of bent because of the plastic that they use for their weapons. I remember Jazwares using this very, you know, it was semi-brittle depending on what weapon it was, but it was very hard plastic, and, you know, they've changed that, I think, in wave 3 or 2, and now we get these more, you know, soft and, you know, bendable weapons, and, you know, the thin weapons are really suffering because of that, because they bend easily and they don't, you know, come, you know, straight. They're just bent and they look really weird and just not how they're supposed to, and that is the case with Linda's sniper rifle, unfortunately. Now, with the things that I dislike out of the way, we can go into what I do like about this figure, and that is starting off with her paint job. I think this is a huge improvement over Kelly. Kelly's figure was just matte white, and it didn't really allow for the finer, smaller details to pop out because they were just all the same color. There was no grit, no little hints of black or just anything, you know, allowing those finer details to pop out. But with this figure, her armor looks worn, it looks used, it allows the finer details to pop out. And if you look at the helmet of the figure, we do get a reflective visor, which I really do like, but there's multiple colors there. There's gray, there's 2 shades of brown, there's orange, there's yellow. It just looks really good, and I'm happy to see the amount of colors being used on her armor to have her armor, you know, pop out and look, you know, just really good. And unfortunately, I think that's the only pro that this figure does have. I think that this is a very cool looking figure. It's just the feel of the figure is not so good. The articulation is very iffy. The torso and the forearms, I wish there was more articulation there. Well, I wish there was just articulation in the torso regardless, but where there is articulation, the articulation does its job well, because, you know, that's what you want out of the figure. You pay for a figure to do its job well, and I think where there is articulation, it does its job. It's just that there's nothing that this figure really excels in. I just think visually, very good figure. The feel of the figure, very iffy, unfortunately. So I do think Jazwares is taking a step in the right direction when it comes to the visuals. The paint job's looking better. The sculpting is good as always. I just wish they would work on their articulation. I don't know why the articulation is getting worse. Jazwares, please work on the torso and forearm articulation of your figures. I just want a really good looking figure to also feel really good. But that is pretty much all I have to say about Spartan Linda. And if you have this figure already, tell me down below, what do you think about this figure? What do you like, dislike? Share your thoughts down below. And with all that said, let's move on to the next figure. And up next is Carter. Now, hopefully I sound more alive because I had to redo all of Linda's lines. So here is Carter in the new box, looking good, very promising. Nice to see a DMR in the Spartan collection, the rest of Wave 6. So let's pop this bad boy open, and just first impressions, visuals, I am liking the look of this guy. I think Jazwares did a really good job at just, you know, the visuals already. So getting to articulation, Carter cannot actually rotate his head 360 degrees, even though there is nothing clashing with his helmet. So I think that's a little strange. I mean, I don't know why he'd be having his head rotating 360 degrees in the first place, but now you can't do it. He can look up and down and sort of tilt his head side to side. Arms, you can't really bring them up all the way. The shoulders will clash with the chest rig, but you can rotate them 360 degrees, which is always good to see. And then when we move to the elbow articulation, you can actually bring his forearm up more than you could have with Linda, so that is good to see. That is improvement. Very happy to see that on this figure, because now he can hold his weapon and bring it up more to his face, so it looks like he's actually aiming down the sights. And then going to hand articulation, same as before, rotate it 360 and bend it pretty much however you want. And then getting to the torso articulation, it's a little bit better than Linda, but it is still really bad. Makes me big sad that there is poor torso articulation on these figures, but at least he can somewhat move it, right? That means something. But then moving down to the leg area of the figure, and you can't really bring his legs up all the way, or else he will just kind of, you know, pop his torso. So you kind of have him sitting or looking like this. You can't really rotate the legs 360 degrees either. The sockets in the thighs kind of prevent you from doing that with this figure, despite being able to do it in wave 5. And I think you were able to do it with Linda. I don't know, maybe I just wasn't, you know, rotating it all the way. And Carter cannot achieve a split, which is sad to see, but, you know, he can still get his legs a good distance. And of course the weird knee bend is still there. It looks like he's breaking his leg. I don't know, it just looks weird to me, but I will admit it did feel better than when Linda was doing it. And then getting to the feet articulation, you can rotate it 360 degrees and bend it back and forth and pretty much however you want for balancing. And then of course the toes bend up and down. You know, I don't see Jazwares messing this up anytime soon. And diving into accessories, starting off with the knife. Of course, all Reach characters will come with a knife. It's nothing too crazy, but it's a nice little detail that Jazwares has added, and I can appreciate that. And getting into the first firearm, which is the DMR, I'm finally happy to see that we have a DMR for the Spartan collection. It was bound to happen with Carter, seeing that's what he uses in the game, and I think that Jazwares did a really good job at recreating this weapon. I think the sculpting's fine, the paint job is fine, you know, there's the silvers and the blacks and the, you know, a gray on the upper part of the barrel. So I think that Jazwares did a good job at executing the DMR, you know, aesthetically. My only issue with the DMR itself is the barrel, because, you know, it's thin, it's gonna bend easily, and that's what happened to me. You know, you can try and push it back into place as much as you want, but it will never truly be straight again, which really bums me out. And then another issue I did have with the DMR is that it does not want to go into the peg that is on the back of Carter. It just doesn't want to fit, it doesn't want to stick, and I just think that is a bummer, because, you know, it was really cool to see that Jazwares was allowing the figures to display the weapons on their back, and I think they did a good job, you know, in the earlier waves. And it just seems like with these waves the weapons just don't want to stick on to the pegs of the Spartans' thighs or backs. But after that, I do think Jazwares did a really good execution of the DMR. I think it looks good, the sculpting, the paint job, no complaints. It's just I kind of wish that they changed the plastic to make it so the barrel doesn't bend, and, you know, I wish they would fix the peg and peg hole issue that is starting to appear in these newer waves. And for our second firearm included, we get the Halo Reach Magnum. Now, we've seen this before with the other Noble Team members, and, you know, it's the same exact thing, same sculpt, same paint job, nothing new like with the sidekick. It's just the original Reach mold and sculpt that Jazwares has been using. It's got some silver, some grays, and then we got the white stripe. In the game it's yellow, so I don't know why they went with the white, but I'm not gonna dox points or allow my panties to get in a knot over this. It's just a mere observation. And the only issue I have with this Magnum is the similar one with the DMR, where the peg does not want to, you know, go into the peg hole. Therefore, you cannot put the Magnum on Carter's thigh, which I think is a really big bummer, but it is something that we do have to deal with. And I just, like I said, with the DMR, I wish this wasn't a problem. I don't know why these issues that were never present before are becoming present now, but you win some, you lose some, and I really hope Jazwares can turn some of these issues around soon. And for the final accessories, we do have the additional hands included. We have 2 holding hands, 2 tactical hands, 2 trigger finger hands, and 1 closed fist with the proper armor plating on them. And here we are at the turntable segment of the video for Carter, where I just go over what I like, dislike, stuff like that, and just getting into the sour stuff first because I just want to get out of the way. Obviously, we're going to talk about the torso. At least his kind of moves a little bit, but it's still unfortunate how limited it is. It really bums me out because, like I said before, Spartans are agile, they're super soldiers. You think their torso would be, bendable, but nope. I don't know what Jazwares is doing, because I swear I remember the earlier waves having, actually decent torso articulation. I just don't know where this lack of torso articulation is coming from. I don't know what decision they made to, have this start happening, but I really want Jazwares to go back to the old formula, because I remember the torso articulation not being this bad. But it just bums me out. Otherwise, articulation overall is fine. It's hard to rate articulation on a figure because it's subjective on what makes good articulation, because if you look at 1,000 toys, that's really good articulation, but you only expect that articulation from 1,000 toys or a company that makes similar quality toys, whereas for Jazwares, they're not that kind of toy company. So the articulation for this figure, though it's not 1,000 toys quality, it is good articulation for what you get. And except the torso. The torso is horrendous, but overall, at least with this guy, Carter, our boy, our blue boy, you pay for what you get, and I think that the articulation for his price isn't terrible, and I'm okay with it overall. But going back on topic with the cons, going to one that we've already talked about, which are the pegs. It's really unfortunate that we can't equip any of the weapons on the thigh or the back. So if you wanted him to have just a assault rifle on his back while he holds his DMR, or you want his DMR on his back while he uses his Magnum, you can't really do that with this figure. I don't know why that's not happening. The peg and the peg hole, they go in, it just they don't stick. I don't know what Jazwares did. They need to fix this, because this wasn't an issue before, but now it is, and I just don't know what they're doing for all these issues to start popping up. But Jazwares, I doubt you're seeing this, but if you do, fix the peg and peg hole issue, because I would like to equip weapons on my Spartans' backs and thighs. And the final con that does come to mind is the DMR barrel bending. Now we can look at Linda's sniper rifle for this example as well, that if any weapon is thin or just long and thin, it's going to bend and not be straight because of the material that Jazwares decided to use for their weapons now. It's something unfortunate, and we have to deal with, because I don't see Jazwares changing this anytime soon. Now this isn't something that I'm gonna hound Jazwares to change like some of the other issues that we're seeing on these figures, but I wish that they would do something to make sure that the barrels of the guns don't bend, because it really sucks displaying your figure with a weapon that doesn't look right and it looks all fucked up. But hey, that's my opinion, and I think that's all I have for cons. But jumping on into what I do like about Carter, and that is his aesthetic, how they executed that. I think they did a really good job with the paint job and the sculpting, and just I think he looks really good. I like how his armor looks worn and used. It allows for smaller details to pop out, and it just builds character onto his character. But it's just, I like how Jazwares executed the look of the figure. I will give them that. Jazwares does a really good job at visuals. There are a few exceptions with Kelly, Halo 2 Master Chief. Halo C Master Chief is iffy because his armor is light green by default, but there's a handful of examples where Jazwares kind of messes up the paint job, but more times than not, they tend to nail it, and this is an example of that. I think they did a really good job at just making Carter look really good, and that is something I am happy about. And this is a better feeling figure as well when comparing it to Linda. Not saying that this is the greatest thing Jazwares put out when it comes to articulation, because I do believe that some of the previous waves did have better articulation, but this figure is definitely it's a small step, but definitely a step in the right direction. But just like I said with Linda, tell me down below, how do you feel about this figure? If you have him already, do you like him, dislike him? What do you like? What do you dislike? Let's create a discussion down below, talk about all that. And with all that said, let's move on to the next figure. Now that I'm awake and it's the next day, maybe I sound alive and enthusiastic, because I have an issue sounding like those two things. I have a very monotone voice, so I'm very sorry if my voice sounds like I'm dead or just, bored. I'm just throwing this in the middle of the video just to keep you on your feet. So yeah, next figure. And here we are with Halo 4 Chief, looking really good, the most anticipated figure for me at least throughout this entire wave. And he's already looking really clean and crisp. And one thing I noticed in the back of the box, it says Mjolnir Mark 6 mod armor. This doesn't show up on anyone else's accessories, like what kind of armor they're using, so I thought that was interesting. But let's open up this guy and take a look into him, because visually already he is looking amazing. So diving into articulation, he can rotate his head not 360 degrees because his helmet does clash with the chest rig, and strangely enough he can't even look up or down. This is unfortunate to see, seeing that everyone else's head articulation has been good, and I think it has to do something with the helmet, because if you do take the helmet off, you can move the ball joint, that is there. It's just when you put the helmet on, he can't really move his head. So I think that is something that's a little bit strange and unfortunate, because this is the most anticipated figure for me, at least throughout this wave, and just seeing an issue already is bad. But really good news, his arm articulation is phenomenal. He can bring his arms up really high, more than any other figure so far, and he can rotate his arms 360 degrees, and he can even do a swivel with the bicep. And the elbow articulation is really good. He can bring his forearm up a really good amount. So a lot of really good stuff here with the arm articulation, the best I've ever seen so far in the Spartan collection, dare I say. And then of course, getting to hand articulation, rotate 360 degrees and bend pretty much however you want. So very happy to see a lot of good stuff in the arm region. And then getting to the torso, this is actually, it's still bad, but it's the best we've seen so far in the wave. I know we have one more figure to go through, but at least he can, kind of do side to side and back and forth. So, really good stuff to see. It seems like each figure is just getting better and better as we go through this wave. But unfortunately, our boy cannot do the splits, but I was still able to get some good poses with him, moving his legs around, despite not being able to do the splits. I don't think splits really define if a figure has good articulation or not. It just kind of helps, and he can't bring his legs up all the way if you do want him to sit down, and you can rotate his legs 360 degrees. So I think, that is the defining factor on how much they can move their legs rather than splits. And then moving to the knees, the knee articulation still does that weird, gross looking thing, but for this figure, it's actually not as bad looking as, the others do. I don't know if it's because of the undersuit or just, the lack or different amount of armor in that area of his legs, but the knee bend, though it still kind of looks gross, just not as gross as the other figures do. So that's a good thing to see on this figure. And then moving to the feet, of course, you can rotate them 360 degrees and angle them pretty much however you want for dynamic poses and balancing. And then the toes, you can bend up and down as usual. I don't think Jazwares will mess up that formula anytime soon. And diving into accessories, starting off with the railgun. Now, I think Jazwares did a phenomenal job with the railgun here. I think they did a good job with the colors and the sculpting, all the little tiny details. It's all there, and I think they just did just a phenomenal job. And they even did the little holo display on the railgun. Now, they don't do the holo display on the assault rifle or other weapons that have holo displays, so I was really surprised to see that, and I'm very happy that they did that attention to detail. And I just overall very satisfied with just how this turned out. This is probably one of the better looking weapons I've seen Jazwares give us. Not saying that they do terrible jobs, it's just this is one of the ones that stick out more than me, just because of how much detail and just care they put into it. and despite the prongs on the railgun being thin, they don't really bend, so I didn't have to worry about it looking all messed up. And unlike Carter with his DMR, the railgun does stick to the back of Chief. I guess this is not a issue we'll see for the foreseeable future. This is just, it's selective with some figures, and hopefully still Jazware can figure out how to fix this issue. So every figure's firearm does stick to their back. But overall, very happy with the sculpt and paint job, very happy with the amount of effort Jazware did put into this, and hopefully this effort can be seen throughout future waves. And for our second weapon, we have the sticky detonator, and I have to say, just like with the railgun, I think Jazware did a good job at nailing this. A lot of tiny details have been sculpted in, and I think the color separation is good. There's some gray, there's the green, and the only thing it's missing is the pop-up screen, but that would also mean the projectile would have to leave the gun for the pop-up screen to come out, and I don't see Jazware doing that anytime soon, and that's not me throwing smoke at them. I just don't see that being something they would do. So I guess there really isn't a need to worry about the pop-up screen, but my only issue with the sticky detonator is like with Carter and the Magnum on his thigh, it does not want to stick in. I don't know why. It's just not. I mean, it's very clear the peg isn't like being blocked by anything, and the peg hole isn't being blocked by anything either. It just does not want to stay on, and that bums me out because the sticky detonator is a very unique weapon, and I don't really see this being re-released unless they do another Halo 4 figure, and then they decide to give that figure a sticky detonator. So I kind of wish I could display my Chief with the sticky detonator, but I will not be able to because it does not want to stick to his thigh. But after that, I have no issues with this iteration of the sticky detonator. I think Jazware did a good job with the sculpting. I like how there's some gray and green in there, and overall just very happy with how it came out. And then of course for the final accessories, we have the additional hands. Chief comes with 2 holding hands, 2 closed fists, 2 trigger fingers, and 1 tactical hand with the proper armor plating for your posing purposes. And that is everything included with Halo 4 Chief. So this brings us to the turntable segment of the video. You already know what this is about. We talk about what I like, dislike, stuff like that, just have a discussion. And starting off with the things I don't like, to get that sour stuff out of the way, I actually only have 2 issues with this figure. One being the head articulation, or the lack of there being. I kind of wish he could look up and down, because him just looking side to side isn't enough. You want him to look all around if you're going to put him in different poses. And then of course the torso articulation, though it is better than Carter and Linda, it is still very iffy and feels very limited and restricted. I'm not trying to get him to suck his own dick, but I would just like him to move around and just be able to move his torso just a little bit more. But besides those 2 things, those are the only cons I can think of for this figure. But going into the pros / what I do like about this figure, and not just visuals this time, one thing I really do like about this figure is his range of motion in the arms. Now I don't know if that's because the shoulder plating is lowered, so the base of his shoulders have more range of motion, or I don't know what it is, but I'm very happy with the amount of movement that you can get out of his arms. It's some of the best I've ever seen in the Spartan collection, and I think this is a giant step forward, at least when it comes to arm articulation for the Spartan collection. And of course, the other thing I really like about this figure is his just aesthetic, his visuals. I think they nailed the paint job, and I'm not even just saying that because Jazware already does a good job when it comes to sculpting and painting, but he sticks out from the rest from this entire wave, at least so far. We still have one more figure to go through, but just so far he just looks really, really phenomenal. The green matches the Halo 4 Chief armor, because I know that Jazwares had an issue with nailing the green on Master Chief when it came to Halo 2 Chief and arguably CE Chief, but I feel like they nailed the green for this figure. He looks really good. His armor looks dirty and gritty. It looks used. The finer details are popping out, and the reflective visor complements the helmet as well. Just everything visually about this figure just looks phenomenal, and I think Jazware just knocked it out of the park. And I don't know if that's because I have a nostalgia bias for Halo 4 Chief. That was the first game to release when I became a Halo fan. By the point I became a Halo fan, Reach was already out and CE Anniversary was already announced, but Halo 4 was like the first big Halo announcement during my time of being a Halo fan. So I don't know if there's that bias there, but I just really love how he's looking. And I think Jazwares, like I said, just knocked it out of the park. So those are pretty much my thoughts on the Halo 4 Chief. If you already have this guy in hand, please tell me down below, what do you think? What do you like, dislike? Let's start a discussion. I like talking about this shit. So yeah, and I think I'm starting to see a pattern here where each figure just gets a little bit better, so I cannot wait to see what the next figure has in store with us. So with all that out of the way, let's take a look at the last figure. Leaving us with our last figure, the Spartan Venator. This is a Halo 4 figure as well, and I thought this was a very unique choice on Jazwares' end. That's not me complaining, I just wasn't expecting this guy, but here's the rest of the wave that we've gone through so far. So without further ado, let's pull our boy out of the box and see what these first impressions are looking like. And just visually, he is almost on par with Halo 4 Chief. I think Jazwares during the production of this wave really started putting in all the hard work towards the second half of the wave with all the Halo 4 figures, and it really does show. So I cannot wait to break this figure down, so let's get right into that. So diving right into articulation, he can look side to side a pretty good distance. He can't do a 360 rotation because the helmet does clash with the chest rig, and he can kind of look up and down, you know, already one thing he has on Halo 4 Chief, but it is kind of a struggle to get him to look up and down. I don't know if this is an issue with the Halo 4 undersuit. Then moving to arm articulation, he can bring his arms up just the amount of range that Chief has, and you can rotate his arms 360 degrees and swivel the bicep. And of course the forearm articulation is really good on this guy. I don't know what Jazwares did, but they really chose for the Halo 4 Spartans to do really well when it comes to articulation so far. And then the torso is, you know, he can kind of swivel it side to side. He can't really do back and forth, but this torso issue is seen throughout the entire Spartan collection, and you know, I can't just blame, you know, Halo 4 or whatever for that. And then he can kind of do a half a split more than Master Chief was able to. I don't know if that's because of the armor on their legs, and then you can rotate his leg 360 degrees. And just the leg articulation on this guy feels really good. You can bring his legs up all the way if you want him to sit down for whatever reason. And then, of course, getting to the knee bend, it still does the weird just looking bend, but because I'm assuming because it's the Halo 4 undersuit, it kind of looks a little better, because that was the same thing with Chief. So he can kind of do almost a full butt kick. And then getting to the feet articulation, he can bend his feet back and forth and pivot them pretty much however you want while rotating them 360 degrees. And then the toe articulation is always the same, swivel up and down. So far, besides the torso, obviously, the articulation is pretty good on this guy. Diving into accessories, starting off with our weapons, and we have Forerunner weapons finally, and we have the scatter shot here, and I think it's a pretty good faithful recreation, all things considered, because I know Forerunner weapons have little floaty bits around them, and you know, I don't expect Jazwares to just do little transparent or do little pegs for these weapons, and it's just one solid piece of plastic. And I can't really fault Jazwares for that, because they didn't choose the Forerunner weapons that have little floaty bits. And this is a $20 figure, so I'm not expecting them to pull out 1,000 toys quality or gimmicks. But my only issue with the scatter shot, and it's more of a nitpick, it's not really an issue itself, is I wish the colors were a little bit different, because Forerunner weapons in the games were more metallic and the yellow was a little bit more orange. So yeah, I just wish that the yellow paint was a little more on the orange side, and that the gray was more shinier or metallic in some sort of way. But overall, I'm very satisfied with how it does look. I think the sculpt is fine. I know Forerunner weapons, they are very flat and like clean and slick looking. There's not that many tiny intricate details on like the big parts of the guns. So, you know, I think that Jazwares did a really good job at recreating the scatter shot here, and it sticks on his back really well. Like, it really, like, if you pull the weapon off his back, the peg actually comes off with it. So I think that this is a very good thing to see, and just the weapons not wanting to stick onto the figure's back is a inconsistent, or I should say selective issue, depending on the figure, I'm assuming. but overall very happy with how the scatter shot turned out. For our next weapon, we have the bolt shot, keeping the Forerunner theme going here, and I actually really like how this looks, the sculpt, all the layers and the tiny little details that they got, and I like how they got the 2 grays, because in the game most Promethean weapons have 2 grays going on. One's more of a metallic kind of silver, but it just looks really good with the 2 grays going on, allowing for different parts of the gun to pop out at you. And then I like how they got the little holographic, piece at the end of the gun, looking really nice. But the only thing I'm gonna be nitpicky about, and I'm not gonna get my panties a bunch over, it's more of just an observation, is the bolt shot does have little orange specks that glow throughout the gun. They're little tiny ones, and Jazwares did not get that here, but I'm not going to get upset about that because I just really like overall how much they went into with the sculpt and all the little details that they got, so I'm very happy with that at least. And fortunately, the bolt shot does want to stick into the thigh of our Spartan here, so that's a very good thing to see. Granted, it doesn't stay on as tight as the scatter shot does, but it's still good to see that we finally have a sidearm that wants to stick to the thigh of one of our Spartans. And yeah, besides me being a nitpicky bitch, I'm very happy with how the bolt shot came out. I think the sculpting's good, I think the paint job's good, and I'm happy that we have a sidearm that will stick to the side of our Spartan's thigh. And for the hands, our Venator Spartan here comes with 2 trigger fingers, 2 holding hands, 2 tactical hands, and 1 closed fist with the proper armor plating on them for your posing purposes. And that is everything included with the Venator Spartan. So here we are at the turntable segment of the video where I go over what I like, dislike, stuff like that, create a discussion and whatnot. So going into what I dislike about this figure to get that sour stuff out of the way, and I think my only really big issue is with the torso articulation. And then going back to head articulation, even though yes, he can look up and down unlike Halo 4 Master Chief, it is really hard to get him to look up. So when posing him, it just kind of looks like he's always looking down or just not looking the right way. And I don't know if that's like that's not a deal breaker by any means, but it's just something that I've noticed, and it kind of bums me out because, you want to get all these cool poses. Your guy needs to kind of look around and have his head properly adjusted to whatever pose you're trying to get him in. But overall, besides the torso articulation and just kind of wishing his head could look up a little bit more, I don't have any issues with this figure personally. And then going over the pros / what I do like about this figure, and that is his range of motion. This is some of the best articulation we've seen in a long while, probably since like late wave 3. Wave 4 is kind of where all the articulation issues, at least in my opinion, started coming in, and I think that this is some of the best articulation we've seen in a long while in the Spartan collection. Granted, the torso area for these figures need to be worked on, and of course I kind of wish he had a little more range of motion in his head, but the arms and the legs just feel really good. You can get some really good poses out of this guy, and I'm very happy to see that. And this is a very much needed step forward on the Spartan collection because, like I said, ever since Wave 4, the articulation quality has been going downhill, and this is definitely a very good improvement, at least in my opinion. And then going over something that I really do like, and of course that is the visuals. The Venator suit is very busy. It's a very busy, armor design, and I think Jazwares nailed it almost perfectly. They got all the little details on his forearms, his chest, his legs. It's just I thought this was a very interesting choice on Jazwares' end, and it really does show how much they do pay attention to the Spartan armor because, like I said, Venator armor, very busy looking armor, and I think they nailed it perfectly. And of course the paint job looks really good. I like the gray and the yellow dynamic, and it looks worn, it looks used, it allows for finer details to pop out, and overall very happy with how this figure looks and feels. And like I've said with the other 3 figures, if you have this guy in hand already, what do you think? What do you like, dislike? Comment that down below. Let me know what you think about this figure. And with all of this out of the way, we can finally move on towards the end of the video where we can make some comparisons amongst the wave, give my final thought about the wave overall. And yeah, let's get on to that. So yeah, here we are. That is all of Wave 6. This is a very interesting wave. A lot of cool new weapons to add to the Spartan collection portfolio. A lot of characters this wave. Usually it's more of just random Spartans and then maybe 1 character, maybe 2 at most thrown in, but we have 3 characters, 1 random Spartan, a lot of cool weapons like I said. So yeah, very interesting wave, very mixed feelings, because the first half of the wave is a little iffy, and then the second half just is, it comes out very strong, very good. So let's go over some of the things that I liked and disliked about this wave. So obviously we're going to cover the things I dislike about this wave first, just to get that sour stuff out of the way. And there's realistically only 3 things about this wave in its entirety that I dislike, and going over the big one, and that is their torso articulation. I don't know what happened. I swear I remember earlier waves having some form of torso articulation, not 1,000 Toys quality, but just, you know, some form of torso articulation. And it seems like that these guys, just like wave 5, and I can't remember with wave 4, but I know definitely with wave 5, these guys just cannot move their torsos. They just don't want to, and it's very heartbreaking to see that, because like I said with Linda and Carter, and I didn't really bring this up with the Venator or Chief, Spartans are agile super soldiers, and you think they'd be able to move their torsos, but I guess not. So that's one thing about this wave that really bums me out, is the torso articulation. I know with Linda, her forearms couldn't be brought up all the way, but that's more of a figure specific issue. And then one thing that I don't really want to blame the entire wave for, but is also the articulation with the heads for Halo 4 Chief and the Venator. I don't know why their heads were just really stiff. I swear it has to do something with the undersuit, because Carter and Linda did not have this issue. And then my second issue with this wave is the pegs and the peg holes on the weapons. I don't know why some weapons do not want to stick to the backs or thighs of the figures. It's just something that I feel like would be very simple. It's a peg and a peg hole. It's nothing intricate, and it's been working ever since wave 1 and all the way up to 5. I don't know why this is an issue now, because me personally, I wasn't having issues in any of the previous waves up until now, obviously, and I just kind of hope this is something that Jazwares can sort out very soon. And then my third and final issue with this wave, and this is more oriented towards Linda and Carter, but I guess if you got really unlucky, this can go towards Halo 4 Chief as well. But the material that the weapons are made out of do not, support, thin, long barrels. And that is shown, like I said, more specifically towards Linda with her sniper rifle and Carter with his DMR. I don't know why Jazwares made this change. My only assumption is that because the original material they were using was, a lot, harder, more thinner pieces on the weapons were a little more brittle and can break off easily. But, at least, they weren't bending and looking all funky and fucked up. And, I think they would only break if you were, being very, batshit with the weapon. If you were very careful with them and you didn't force any pressure onto them, I feel like you would have been fine. At least that's my opinion, because I really just miss having straight barrels, because I'm tired of having snipers and, just any other, precision weapon having a fucked up barrel. But that's just how I feel. I don't know, maybe you like a fucked up barrel. I don't know why I'm being passive aggressive. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, that's the only issue I have with when it comes to the weapons of this wave, is that the DMR and the sniper. And if you get really unlucky, because I know the prongs on the railgun can bend, but because they're kind of thick, they kind of just go back into place. But like I said, you get really unlucky. I wouldn't be surprised if you got one with a fucked up, barrel. But yeah, that is probably the final issue I have with this wave. So now, flipping things around and going into the things I do like about Wave 6, starting with the one that I've repeated throughout this entire video, and that is the visual execution of these figures. In my opinion, I don't know, maybe you're going to be extra stingy or extra hard on this wave. If not, I think we can all agree that these figures look really good. I'm very happy with the sculpt and paint job of these figures. So I do have to give Jazwares credit where credit is due, and saying good job on the awesome execution of the visuals of these figures. By no means is this NECA or 1,000 Toys quality, but for $20, these are some really good looking figures, and I just can't get over how good they look. Then the second thing that I actually really like about this wave, and that is the amount of new weapons we are seeing through this wave. I think the first 3 waves, it might have been the first 2, I don't know, but we weren't getting a lot of new weapons. We were just getting kind of the same old, a few new weapons here and there, but nothing like, consistent, and I'm happy that I think starting around Wave 4, we were starting to get a consistent flow of new weapons, and Wave 6 does not disappoint with that, and I'm just very happy to see that. At least this is a semi-subjective, reason to like the wave. You may like some other weapons and wish that we got different weapons and not the ones that we got in this wave, but me personally, very happy to see Jazwares expand their weapon portfolio and show that they're not afraid to add new things to the Spartan collection. So the third and final reason why I like Wave 6, now this point is completely subjective. At least the point with the weapons is semi-subjective, because I think it's overall good that they're adding new weapons to their portfolio. I think that's something we can all agree on, but what weapons they add is the subjective part. You may not like the weapons they added in Wave 6. Personally, I do, but you may disagree. But this final point is completely subjective. You may or may not disagree with this, but the selection of characters for this wave, granted, we needed Carter to finish off Noble Team, and we needed Linda to continue the Blue Team line that they're doing, but I think Halo 4 Chief and the Venator are great additions to the Spartan collection, because these are our first Halo 4 entries to the Spartan collection. The closest thing we got to Halo 4 was Palmer, but that was a Halo 5 addition to the Spartan collection, because if you couldn't tell, the assault rifle that she comes with is the Halo 5 version. But going off topic now, going back on the topic of this final point, I'm just happy to see Jazwares add more, different types of Spartan armor to their portfolio. It shows that they're not afraid to add things, and they probably hear the fans and they're like, okay, we get it, you want more variety, here it is. So personally, I'm happy with Halo 4 Chief, because unpopular opinion, I really like the Halo 4 Chief armor. It's not my favorite, but it is really nice looking, and I'm very happy with how they executed it, and I'm very happy we have it in the Spartan collection now. And the Spartan Venator, the body armor itself, not really cared for it, but the helmet is very cool, and I think it's just a very neat addition to the Spartan collection. It also shows that they're okay with adding these integral and very busy looking Spartan armors, and that means we can probably get more later down the future. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with the outcome of Wave 6 when it comes to the visuals and new additions to the Spartan collection. There are some issues with the feel, the figures, a lot of things Jazwares needs to go back and think about when it comes to articulation and whatnot. But overall, very happy with Wave 6. And before we jump into the outro, I want to do some rankings, who I think did what best, and so let's jump into that. And starting off by my most anticipated figure, which was Master Chief, I was just very excited to see that we were getting a Halo 4 figure, because I do have a soft spot for that game, and I do think that the Halo 4 Master Chief design looks really, really cool. So he was my most anticipated figure for the wave. And if I had to choose a figure for second place, it would have to be Carter, and that's because he is the final figure that we would need to complete Noble Team, and I can now say I have every member of Noble Team. And when it comes to best accessories, this is actually a tie for me, because I don't know who has the better accessories, and it is a tie between Halo 4 Master Chief and the Spartan Venator. These guys come with some of my favorite weapons that 343's ever given us in the Halo franchise, and I just can't choose which, pair I like more. And props to Jazwares for choosing some of the more interesting weapons from Halo 4 to give us for the Spartan collection, rather than just a generic assault rifle or magnum or something like that. And then moving on to our next topic, which is the best feeling figure, and by that I mean articulation. And I have to give this to Master Chief. He is able to move his legs and arms so much more than Carter and Linda can. And I was going to tie this between the Spartan Venator and Chief, but then I realized Chief has the most torso articulation out of any figure in this wave. And sure, he can't, look up and down all that well, but at least he can still move his head to some extent. But he, like I said, has that torso articulation, unlike, everyone else in this wave. So I do have to give Halo 4 Chief the best feeling figure out of this entire wave, because of just how fluent and good his arms are when they move, and just, of course, his torso moves. And yeah, sure, it's not the best torso articulation, but at least it fucking moves. And for the final topic I am pulling out of my ass, it is the best looking figure, and I want you all to take a wild guess on who it is, because if you get this wrong, I'll be genuinely surprised. But it is Halo 4 fucking Master Chief. I just really like how this figure looks, feels. I think the accessories are awesome. I just think Jazwares fucking nailed it out of the park when it came to this guy. And he looks awesome. The color, the grit, just everything about this figure looks amazing. And hence, best looking figure out of Wave 6. And man, just poor Spartan Linda. There's nothing wrong with the figure. I don't hate the figure at all. It's a fine looking figure. The articulation's a little iffy, but like, the figure doesn't do anything wrong. It never did anything personal to me. I just kind of feel bad that I didn't make it anywhere up on the ranking. And now, finally, with all that said, we are at the outro of the video. So tell me, guys, what did you think of this wave? Do you like it, dislike it? What do you like? What do you dislike? Tell me down below. Create a discussion. That is all up to you, but you know, commenting's a lot of effort, so don't worry about it if you don't want to comment. But you know, if you want to start a discussion down below, you're more than welcome to. And I really hope you enjoyed the video. I know this is on the longer side. It's upwards of 50 minutes, just under an hour, and that's because there's 4 figures instead of the normal 3 that I'm usually reviewing. And I also, you know, had actual discussion in this video. And yeah, so hopefully this video doesn't scare away people for being too long. I'm going to make it very clear that there are chapters in the description below, so you can pick and choose what part of the videos you do want to watch. But yeah, with all that out of the way, hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, I have more reviews on the channel, and I have a backlog of stuff on the way, so do not worry about that if you do enjoy these videos. So a like and a subscription would be more than welcome here. It'd be more than appreciated. And yeah, I will see you all in the next video. God kill me.